Hey, welcome to another episode of the Thenaturalmedic Adventures. My name is Craig. I'm your host. This is a slightly new format. I am actually I am recording this as a YouTube video and a podcast simultaneously. So bear with me here for any technical difficulties. What we're going to talk about today, though, is we're going to talk about how to plan a backpacking trip in 2021. It's been kind of a ride here, guys. If you've been with me as a podcast listener or a YouTube viewer or both, would love a subscribe to the podcast and a like and a subscribe on the YouTube channel if you're enjoying my content. It's been kind of a, odd couple of years, 2020, 2021, but here we are. So what we're going to talk about today is how to best do planning for a backpacking trip. Now, I'm located in Northeast Texas, so you might look at a different place. Just as an example today, we're going to be looking actually up in Arkansas. There's some really nice places that are not that far from me up in Arkansas. So I've kind of already done some of my stuff, but I'm not going to jump ahead too much. But here is the first step in planning. You definitely want to evaluate yourself. You want to think about what are the goals and what am I seeking for this particular trip? Am I trying to, get away from it all? Am I trying to see waterfalls? Am I trying to see certain rock formations? Am I trying to see, different vegetation or animals, or, what is your, and you kind of have to evaluate, you have to, really reflect on yourself and figure out what are my true skills? Have I been backpacking before? Have I been day hiking? Have I done any hiking? Am I a beginner? Am I intermediate? Or am I, more of an expert? Those are the things you have to consider first and foremost, because those are going to be coming later on when we get down through the list here and figure out what we need to do. So here we are looking at the webpage, in my particular case, for the Ouachita National Forest, which is located in Arkansas. It's a large national forest, kind of in the central to west central part of the state, covering the majority of the Ouachita Mountain Range from just a little bit west of Little Rock, Arkansas, all the way into Oklahoma. I guess you'd say the east central and southeast part of Oklahoma. So it's a pretty large national forest, and there's a lot of different things there. So those are things you need to think about. The area that I'm planning on going to, we'll get to a little bit later, is called the Caney Creek Wilderness. The Caney Creek Wilderness is located just a little bit to the north of Murfreesboro, Arkansas, about 25 to 30 minutes north of that area, about an hour west, approximately, maybe a little bit longer, of Hot Springs, Arkansas. So, relatively accessible, but it's still, in this case, it's providing enough getaway for me to be kind of in a remote area. It's not really that remote. I think the wilderness area itself is about 13,000 acres, somewhere around there. Maybe it'll tell us on here. We're going to look on here in a second. So we're going to go ahead and bring that up. I know what I can do personally. I've been hiking, day hiking pretty easily, somewhere between 3.5, 8 miles over the past 6 months or so. So I feel pretty comfortable with that. Now you have to keep in mind, whenever you go out backpacking, you're going to be carrying your food with you, some water, your shelter, your clothing. You're going to be carrying probably at least twice what you would normally carry. So if, let's say you carry 10 pounds of gear on your day hike, you're probably going to carry at least twice as much as that, especially as a beginning hiker, because you're going to have heavier equipment that's not going to be as lightweight or ultralight as maybe you want it, because it's, the lighter stuff is more expensive. And that's okay. You got to start somewhere. Or maybe you borrowed some older gear from a friend, or you found some at a thrift store, or whatever. But if you are still looking for gear, I do have a video I did a couple of weeks ago about how to find good deals on gear. And I have some recommendations on gear on my YouTube channel. And I talked about it on my pods as well. I will put links to that in the YouTube video about how to look at those videos, so you'll have those to reflect on. The next thing you need to think about is, who are you going to go with? Are you going with your, other friends, or your spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, that also enjoys backpacking? Do you have friends that enjoy backpacking or want to go? And you have to think about, what are their goals and incorporate that in your plan. What are their skills? If you have to go with somebody or somebodies, more than one person, generally at least one of those people, I would recommend, especially if you're a beginning backpacker, to kind of level up. Have them be a little bit more, if you're a video game player and you're thinking about role-playing game, but you want to partner up with somebody that has a higher skill level than you, because if something goes wrong, then you can rely on them to help you out. And you can also learn from them and get better yourself. So the advantages, of course, going with a group, or a group would be yourself and at least one other person. You have that kind of safety of that other person to help you if something happens with them or something happens with you. You kind of help each other out. But on the other hand, you have to work out, their schedule with your schedule, where they want to go versus where you want to go. And so it just, you're going to have to make compromise. And if you're having a conflict with them, you're going to have to work that out. You don't want to be out in the wilderness and get upset at each other and go from there. If you go on a solo trip, of course, the advantage is there. You don't have to answer to anybody. I'm going on a solo trip. When I go to my trip to Caney Creek here in a few weeks in the Ouachitas, I don't have to answer to anybody. I'm on my own schedule. If I want to take 2 days to do it, I can take 2 days to do it. If I want to take 3 days to do it, I can take 3 days to do it. If I want to go on the weekday or the weekend or whatever, I can do that whenever I want. But if something happens and I get myself into trouble, there's nobody to rely on but myself. So that's things you need to consider. So next thing you want to do is pick a trail. Like I said, I've already picked this trail here. Let's bring up, I believe it's under special places. If it's not, I will search for it here in a second. Nope, not under special places. Pardon me. Let us go to recreation then. And we will go to, the nice thing about being in the national forest versus a national park or something like that, you don't have to worry about getting a permit. This is not an area that people go to a lot, so not a big deal. You don't have to worry about that. And we're going to go backpacking. So I just went through the list there. Here we go. Caney Creek Trail. There it is. So this is what information that you need. Once you pick your trail, so I would recommend, if it's not in a national forest or a state park or something like that, you can go to backpacking.com, or you can just type in Google so-and-so trail and then the location. Or you can type in, for example, I live in Texas, you can type in Texas backpacking trails, or Arkansas backpacking trails, or wherever you live or wherever you are going or want to go, you can do that. So you got a pretty good information overall here. It tells you, what you're doing in brief there. What, if you do the entire trail, how long it is and how long it takes on average. That's pretty much the way it works with this particular deal right here. Now, if you want to get more information, you just click right here, and it's going to bring up a basic overview of Caney Creek. So it tells you all about the highlights of the trail. Okay, I was a little bit off on the wilderness size. It's 14,000 acres, almost 14,500 acres. Not too bad. The entire length of the trail, if you do all the miles of the trail, I'm not planning on doing that, but you could do 17.5 miles, and that's one-way travel. So the trails in the wilderness are not marked or signed, so this kind of tells you, what you need to do. Your access, it tells you how to get there. It tells you the water is non-potable, which is kind of a duh. And, what types of trail access that you have. Of course, you can write them here. You can go to the website here directly, and you can go to look at this map here. So this map gives you a good idea of the entire trail here. This kind of thick line here shows the boundary of the wilderness. And you have designated parking areas here in this particular map. It shows you this is here. It's a wilderness area. It's open to equestrian use, and it's also open to hiking. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but I do have this already printed out on my deal right here. So what I'll do with this is I'll take this and I'll put it into a plastic bag or laminate it or whatever, so that it's protected from the rain, or in case it rains while I'm up there. Now, of course, you can use, while you're planning or while you're up there, you can use things like alltrails, Onyx backcountry, gut hook if the trail happens to be on gut hook. Gut hook usually is, what I've found so far, that's limited to some of the longer trails, which is great. Their information on there that I've seen so far is really wonderful, but you're limited to what they have on there. But I always think it's good to have a backup in case your phone messes up for some reason, or you didn't get it fully downloaded for offline use, or what have you. So this is getting the info part. Just while we're here and looking at the map, you always want to practice leave no trace principles. So we're doing this first part right now, the plan ahead and prepare. When you're out there traveling and camping, you want to choose durable surfaces to camp on. You want to carry your waste out and dispose of if you have to go poop out in the woods, you need to, abide by the regulations. Some places have you pack out all of that stuff, including your own feces and excrement. But a lot of places will allow you to bury it with a 6-inch shovel, trowel, and leave it out there. Leave what you find, respect the wildlife, minimize use and impact of fires, and be considerate of other visitors. So that's just something to think about. That's part of the info process as well, is, trying to abide by leave no trace, because you want to leave this area definitely the way that you found it, but you want to, if you find trash there or whatever, you need to pack that stuff out, and in addition to your own trash, if you can. All right, so pretty much we have our plan right here as far as, what to expect, the trail information, how to get there, so on and so forth. So now we've pretty much done that. Then we're going to sort through our data and maybe add some additional sources. So right here I have another website, which is a guy called the Oklahoma Hiker. And there's a bunch of different sites like this throughout the the web. You can probably find these on a lot of different trails. I'll show you some other trails toward the end of or talk about them. You won't be able to see them, obviously, if you're on the podcast, but we'll talk about those as we get through towards the end. And so this kind of helps me with some more planning, because this was a trip done by, on this particular site, it was Mara Kun. She did this trip on December the 4th, 2018, and it's located in southwest Arkansas. We already saw that. So it tells you the mountains, tells you how long the trail was that she did. She did the loop trail, which is what I plan on doing as well, which is 9.4 miles. Plan on doing 2 days and 1 night is what I plan on doing. And she got some nice pictures. Some of the stuff that I want to see when I'm there, which is the Katy Falls is one thing. It's just a small waterfall there. And she has Google directions on here. So this further helps you even more than the Ouachita National Forest stuff. And kind of gives you some more planning. She talks about, don't ford streams that are too deep. Be careful. Talks about all the different trail crossings that she had to do across water, and some more pictures. Talks about Katy Falls, and talking about there's no designated trail blazes because it's a wilderness area. and no signs. But you do have a rock cairn that you can see at the junction, which if you've been watching any videos, you've probably seen some cairns out there and how they mark that. Now, I'm not saying Karen, I'm saying cairn. So anyway, we're not going to talk about cairns. Anyway, so that's pretty much how that goes with this particular site. And there's other sites too. You can go to backpacker.com. Matter of fact, I'll show you that real quick while we're thinking about it. Backpacker.com is a real good place to get a lot of information. If you go to backpacker.com, you can go to the trip tab right here. You don't have to be a member of Backpacker or be a subscriber. You can get this information. Some of their stuff can be limited based on being a member, but as far as majority of the stuff there, you don't have to worry about a lot of that. But what you can do is, if you go back up to the top here, you can actually search. So if I want to search for a trip, let's say I want to do backpacking Arkansas. And it should bring in all the back trips in, or articles about backpacking in Arkansas. So you have the best backpacking in America. Here's Oklahoma. Best backpacking in Missouri, Arkansas's Buffalo River, the Butterfield Trail. One of the best through hikes in America is hidden in the Ozarks. And so on and so forth. So this is articles that had Arkansas in them. Okay. Showing up on the screen here. So let's just look at this first one, just for sake of time. We're not going to look at all of these, but we'll look at this one real quick. It's the best backpacking in Arkansas. And so it's going to talk about some of the longer trails here. The Ozark Highlands Trail, which is on my list to do in the near future. It starts at Lake Fort Smith State Park and goes all the way to the Buffalo River. It's 165 miles of travel through the Ozark Mountains. The Buffalo National River. They have trails there. Doesn't really talk about the trails in that particular type. The trail that I know of there, I believe, is about 38 miles long. And then you have the Ouachita National Trail, which is also on my list to do. I've seen different mileages for it. 192 miles. It's also 222 miles, I've heard. So depends on where you're going. So we'll look at that in a second. So here we go. One of the best through hikes in America is hidden in the Ozarks. So it just depends on what you want to do. But that's some ways to find different trails. So let's just do another example just to show you how to find backpacking trails. So let's say backpacking trails in Arkansas, just as an example. You could do your state or your location. If you're watching this from somewhere else other than the United States, put your local area in there. Backpacking trails in Canada, wherever. So here we go. So we got a whole list of things here just to give you some examples. So we pretty much planned our route. We pretty much are overall about halfway done. So let's look at one of these other deals here. Let's just pick one. Best backpacking trails in Arkansas. This is on alltrails. Alltrails is another way you could do it, and alltrails is free. You can get the pro version. So if you have the app, you can download the route to your phone. That's for offline use. Or you can use the free version and have, as long as you have a cell signal, you'll be able to get it that way. So it shows some trails here. Just listed Eagle Rock Loop, which is another, be close to the one that I'm doing in the Ouachita Mountains. You have one here in Buffalo River, and Hobbs State Park, Butterfield, Winding Stairs, etc. Anyway, but you kind of see how that plays out. You figured all that out. You want to start, figuring out, if you're going with a group or you're going solo or whatever, when are you going to when are you going to do this? Are you going to do this next? I would recommend at least a couple of weeks of planning, not just jumping out and doing this. But, when are you going to do this? Are you going to do it next month, the month after that, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever? Kind of have a general idea of the plan and figure that out. Now, how are you going to problem solve, whether you're going by yourself or whether you're going with your group? One way you're going to do that is you're going to make sure that when you go out on the trail, you're going to, or before you go out on the trail, you're going to plan accordingly, know how to get there, and you're going to know your gear. If you have a tent that you just got or you've never set up, I recommend, if you have a backyard or you have some place to set it up in a park or at a friend's, I recommend you set that up. Now, if you haven't used your sleeping bag before, I recommend you get that out. If you haven't used your air mattress before, make sure it's going to inflate or make sure it's going to work right for you. If you haven't used your stove before, make sure all of your gear that you're going to take with you is going to work ahead of schedule, ahead of time. And definitely want to prepare for emergency. I have talked about first aid in brief on my YouTube channel here and also on the podcast. So whichever one you're listening to, hopefully both, like I said, I'll link to the video that I talked about first aid kits that I did on YouTube a couple of weeks ago of the showing of this video. And you can get some ideas about your first aid kit, what you might need there. But just like using your gear, you also want to make sure that you plan accordingly and you know how to use that stuff. Now, chances are good, the main things you're going to encounter are, things that require a Band-Aid. You're going to cut yourself. You're going to get a blister maybe, or a hot spot. Maybe have to deal with insects or some sun exposure, things like that. So all that stuff, you can take care of with your first aid kit pretty easily. But it's good to be prepared just in case. When I go on this one, if you see my first aid video, I'm probably going to use my Adventure 2-person kit. The name is escaping me at the moment. Adventure Medical Kits, Adventure Medical Kits, and it's a 2-person kit, and it's about yay big, and it's got some more stuff in it that just would be useful if I'm going with by myself or with someone else. The one I carry now is a little small kit I got at Walmart, and it's got some extra stuff I've added into it, but it may not be quite adequate for a backpacking trip. It's good for day hiking, but for backpacking, I think I need a little bit more. Now, so take that into consideration. If anybody goes with me, I'm a paramedic. I can self-treat and I can treat other people. I'll be a good backpacking partner. Just throwing that out there for everybody. Next part of your planning, you're going to have to plan, depending on how long you're going to be out there, what are you going to eat? And how are you going to get water? Let's talk about the eating first. I'm going to do a video here coming up in the next few weeks. I'm going to do a video about cheap meals and how you can obtain these cheap meals in your grocery store. And if nothing else, you can go to your local Walmart. Target, I believe, carries these. Or if you happen to be close to a more, I'm not going to say more robust, but a more well-stocked, I guess, outdoor recreation type store like REI, for example, or something that has a little bit more than the sporting goods section does at Walmart, you might be able to find some more variety of meals. But you can get, I'm not saying you have to get a backpacking style meal. Like I said, I'm going to show you, I'm going to do a video here in the next couple of weeks that will be about, how to go to the grocery store and figure out ways to get cheap backpacking meals that will work for you on the trail. An easy solution to start off with is just have a couple of these cheap meals that you can get. You can actually get the 1-person serving or the 2-person serving, I believe, at Walmart. I don't know, and they're not very expensive. They're about $4 or $5, as opposed to the 2-person, which most places are going to be around $9 to $10. The second part of that is, your body's going to need fuel. So you have to think about, what are you going to eat as far as meals, but you're also going to have to know what kind of snacks am I going to bring? what is going to keep my body fuel up. Because if you're hiking, on average, you're going to be burning, somewhere around 400 to 500 calories an hour. If you're hiking at a good pace, and especially if you're having to deal with extra terrain, which I'll be dealing with. I'm used to more flat trails over here in East Texas, but when I go up in the Ouachitas, especially with a pack on my back, it's going to be slower going, and it's going to be more energy consumed to get that going. As far as water is concerned, you need to know ahead of time, what ways are you going to obtain water. If you happen to be doing a trail that's on Gut Hook does have places to obtain water, noted in whatever trail guide that you have downloaded on there. Alltrails, as far as I know, does not have that, but you can see on the map we're looking at right here, you can see we do have several creek crossings, and there's plenty of water available pretty much majority of the time of the year. I believe Caney Creek and the Katy Creek area, which is where the waterfall is, they're running around pretty much all year long, unless it's a really severe drought. There's going to be water available. But that water is not going to be drinkable directly, so you need to have a way to filter it out or treat it with tablets or UV light or whatever. If you haven't seen my video on water purification, I will link that in the description below. And I'll also put a note of it so you can check it out. And I kind of go over the major different types of water filtration, water purification, and let you decide kind of for yourself. My favorite is the Katadyn Hiker Pro because it's pretty versatile and it's super easy to use, and you don't have to worry about a lot of the other things that you would with some of the other filters out there. But I'll let you decide for yourself when you look at that video. So the next thing to think about is, how are you going to pack all this stuff? Generally, you want to get all of your stuff first. That's your sleep system, your tent, your clothing you're going to be taking with you. Definitely follow the 10 essentials. If you're going to go out there in 70-degree weather, be prepared that it could get hotter. It could get colder. So take a jacket, take a rain shell at least, or a poncho or some way to keep yourself dry in case it rains. Just be prepared for all that. Follow the 10 essentials. And if you haven't heard of the 10 essentials, I've talked about them to some extent on my YouTube channel. I've also talked about them in my podcast, and I will link those in the description of the YouTube video. And if you're on the podcast, you go back a couple episodes, and I go in detail. Episodes 4 and 5 of the last season, I talk in detail about the 10 essentials and what those entail. So the last thing you do, we've pretty much covered everything you need to do here. The last thing you need to do a couple of days before you go out, check the weather. Again, make sure that you're adequately prepared for the weather, and make sure that you have, like I said, the gear, a jacket if you need it, or a fleece, or the right sleeping bag, for the conditions, and a rain shell, or rain jacket, or poncho, or whatever to have out there in case of rain. Now, as far as your shoes go, I didn't really talk about that. I've hiked in trail runners, and I've hiked in hiking boots. I'm not going to get that discussion in this. I may do a video later about that, about what works for me. Everybody is different, so definitely do your research on that. Very last thing I'll tell you to end of this podcast and video is, before you leave out, make sure you tell somebody where you're headed, how long you're going to be there, and so on and so forth, because you want to make sure that if something happened, you don't come back for whatever reason, you got out there and you got injured, or you have car trouble or whatever, that they send somebody after you to make sure that you're okay. So tell a loved one, your mom, your dad, your spouse, your grandma, whoever, tell somebody reliable that, where you're going to be, how long you're going to be there, and where it's located, roughly, just to protect yourself. But definitely appreciate your attention, and love subscribe to the podcast if you're listening on the podcast. Would love a good thumbs up if you're watching this on YouTube. and love for you to subscribe to YouTube to get more videos like this. Hope this was helpful for you. If it was helpful, definitely I hope you have happy trails out there, and I'll definitely see you out there on the trail. Take care. Bye.